Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
I think it's terrible. You want to know the truth? I think it's a disgrace. What's going on in this country, I think it's a disgrace.
Yes, you are.
The memo was sent to Congress. It was declassified. Congress will do whatever they're going to do. But I think it's a disgrace what's happening in our country. And when you look at that, and you see that, and so many other things, what's going on,
What is he saying?
a lot of people should be ashamed of themselves, and much worse than that. So I sent it over to Congress. They will do what they're going to do. Whatever they do is fine. It was declassified. And let's see what happens. But a lot of people should be ashamed. Thank you very much.
Are you not concerned that the FBI doesn't want the memo out?
Thank you very much.
Do you think you're more likely to fire Rosenstein? Do you still have confidence in him after reading the memo?
You figure that one out.
Whoops. So the memo's out, everybody. The memo's out. It just makes no sense. This is the lousiest, attack on the law enforcement. It just makes no sense. I can read it to you. In fact, I will. But it makes no sense. Because when you read through this thing, you find out that in July, just jot this down, in July of 2016, George Papadopoulos, who has pled guilty lying to the FBI, was at that drunk dinner with an Australian intelligence officer and told the Australian intelligence officer that there was evidence of a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, and that Russia had dirt on Hillary Clinton. That was in July. August, September, October. October 21st, 2016, the DOJ and the FBI went to get a FISA probable cause order to start a wiretap against Carter Page. And this memo is trying to say that the procedure used to get Carter Page, to get a warrant against Carter Page, was triggered by a dossier that was received in October. This makes no sense. This was started because George Papadopoulos was telling Australian intelligence that Russia was trying to meet with Trump. They had dirt on Hillary Clinton, which eventually did happen. It happened in June, actually. And then in July, Papadopoulos is telling Australian intelligence, and Australian intelligence operates with us. They're part of the Five Eyes, so we share intelligence with them. And so they shared it with us. And the warrant wasn't applied for until 3 months later. How is this? This is a nothing, bro. This is worse than a nothing. This is a nothing slider. It's not even a big burger. It's not even a big juicy. It's not even a Five Guys. It's just a little slider. It's a White Castle. Delicious, for the base, but makes no sense. This really makes no sense. Here's what it says. I'll read it to you. On October 21st, 2016, DOJ and FBI sought and received a FISA probable cause order authorizing electronic surveillance on Carter Page. Well, we were right about that. We knew this had to do with Carter Page, right? Okay. Page is a U.S. citizen who served as a volunteer advisor. Why did nobody get paid who worked for Trump? It's so interesting. Served as a volunteer advisor to the Trump presidential campaign. Consistent with requirements under FISA, the application had to first be certified by the director or deputy director of the FBI. So that would be Comey at that time and McCabe, right? It then required approval of the Attorney General, that would be Lynch, Deputy Attorney General, that would be Sally Yates, or the Senate-confirmed Assistant Attorney General for National Security. Okay, the FBI and DOJ obtained one initial FISA warrant targeting Carter Page and 3 renewals. Now, here's what I want you to know. To get Pfizer warrants are good for 90 days. To get a renewal, you have to show that you are receiving valuable information, that this person is acting as a foreign agent. That's what Pfizer is, right? So you have to show over and over again, every 90 days, that you are receiving information and show the court what you're getting. And they did get 3 renewals. As required by statute 50 U.S.C. Section 1805 D1, a Pfizer order on an American citizen must be renewed by the Pfizer court every 90 days, and each renewal requires a separate finding of probable cause. Okay, that's what I just said. Then, Director James Comey signed 3 Pfizer applications in question on behalf of the FBI. Deputy Director Andrew McCabe signed 1. Then the Deputy AG, Sally Yates, then Acting Deputy AG, Dana Buente, and Deputy Acting AG, Rod Rosenstein, each signed 1 or more Pfizer applications on behalf of DOJ. So listen, they're trying to implicate all these people, just so you know why their names are here. And this is why nothing was redacted, because Trump is looking to clean house. Now, of course, he fired Sally Yates. He's fired Comey. McCabe retired early, but according to Junior, who was tweeting like a madman the other day, he alleges that Andy McCabe was fired by his father. Who the hell knows? But Sally Yates is gone. McCabe is gone. Comey is gone. So all that's left is Rod and Dana Buente. And they're all named in this memo as being suspect, okay? So it says, due to the sensitive nature of foreign intelligence activity, Pfizer submissions, including renewals before the Pfizer court, are classified. As such, the public's confidence in the integrity of the Pfizer process depends on the court's ability to hold the government to the highest standard, particularly as it relates to surveillance of American citizens. However, here's their case. The Pfizer court's rigor in protecting the rights of Americans, which is reinforced by 90-day renewals of surveillance orders, is necessarily dependent on the government's production to the court of all material and relevant facts. Okay. This should include information potentially favorable to the target of the Pfizer application. That is known by the government. They're alleging that there was positive information about Carter Page that they didn't provide to the court. You know, he's a nice guy. He's too stupid to have done this. I don't know. He's been on the FBI's radar since 2013, as I told you, and that's from a Wall Street Journal article yesterday, okay? Anyway, in the case of Carter Page, the government had at least 4 independent opportunities before the Pfizer court to accurately provide an accounting of the relevant facts, but they never say what they are. However, our findings indicate that, as described below, material and relevant information was omitted. And here, okay, they don't. This is what they're saying was not told to the Pfizer court, and that would change everything they were hearing on the intercepts, right? I mean, you had 90 days and then a renewal, and then 90 days and then a renewal, and then 90 days and then a renewal, and 90 days and then a renewal. So you had 4 renewals. Okay, and they're saying that, each time they went to the court and they would show the court that they are getting valuable information, that this warrant needs to be renewed for another 90 days. They left out this. They left out that the dossier compiled by Christopher Steele on behalf of the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign formed an essential part of the Carter Page Pfizer application. Steele was a longtime FBI source. Well, if he was a source, why would you say that, who was paid over $160,000 by the DNC and Clinton campaign via the law firm Perkins Coie and research firm Fusion GPS to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia. What they omit is that Free Beacon and Paul Singer actually was the first funder, and they're Republicans. And also what they omit in here is that when Chris Steele went to the FBI, and when he was no longer being paid. He did it because he said he thought there was a crime in progress. I have the testimony from Glenn Simpson on this computer here and also printed out. And I'll read it to you in a minute. But the initial Pfizer application, the initial one, okay, not the renewals, the initial one, notes Steele was working for a named U.S. person but does not name Fusion GPS and Principal Glenn Simpson, who was paid by a U.S. law firm, Perkins Coie, representing the DNC, even though it was known by DOJ at the time that political actors were involved with the Steele dossier. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who funded it. What matters is whether or not whether the Steele dossier was the primary thing they relied on, or did the Steele dossier corroborate what the FBI already knew? Because 3 months before the initial application, Australian intelligence had called our intelligence agencies to tell them that George Papadopoulos, another foreign policy advisor on the Trump campaign, had sat down and told the Australian intelligence officer that there were meetings in Trump Tower and that Russia had dirt on Hillary Clinton. And that, I'm sure, was included. But see, they don't. Okay. Anyway. The application does not mention Steele was ultimately working on behalf of and paid for by the DNC and Clinton campaign, or that the FBI had separately authorized payment to Steele for the same information. It doesn't matter. Steele went there as an FBI informant. He is a source for the FBI and always has been. And yet, that wasn't what primarily was relied upon to get this warrant on Carter Page, because Carter Page had already been on the FBI's radar screen since 2013. I told you in 2015 there was a prosecution of 3 Russian spies that Carter Page was handing documents to. Anyway, the Carter Page FISA application also cited extensively, and this is a joke, cited extensively a September 23rd, 2016 Yahoo News article by Michael Isikoff, which focuses on Page's July 16 trip to Moscow. This article does not corroborate the Steele dossier because it is derived from information leaked by Steele himself to Yahoo News. I don't think that the FISA judge, who's appointed by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, relied on Michael Isikoff's Yahoo News report. Do you? The Page FISA application incorrectly assesses that Steele did not directly provide information to Yahoo News. Steele has admitted in British court filings that he met with Yahoo News and several other outlets in September 2016 at the direction of Fusion GPS. Perkins Coie was aware of Steele's initial media contacts because they hosted at least one meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2016 with Steele and Fusion GPS where this matter was discussed. So what? Steele was suspended and then terminated as an FBI source for what the FBI defines as the most serious of violations, an unauthorized disclosure to the media of his relationship with the FBI in an October 30, 2016 Mother Jones article by David Korn. Steele should have been terminated for his previous undisclosed contacts with Yahoo and other outlets in September before the Page application was submitted to the FISA court in October, but Steele improperly concealed from and lied to the FBI about these contacts. Steele's numerous encounters with the media violated the cardinal rule of source handling, maintaining confidentiality, and demonstrated that Steele had become a less than reliable source for the FBI. You know, this is also freaking fascinating, except they didn't rely on the Steele dossier for this warrant. They relied on their intelligence reports that were begun by George Papadopoulos in July when he told Australian intelligence. Also, remember, there are intercepted phone calls. There are intercepted phone calls of Michael Flynn talking to Russians, 5 of them in one day. There are intercepted calls with Jeff Sessions talking to Russians, Ambassador Kislyak. There are intercepted phone calls of everybody. And this FISA initial application, I'm sure, did not rely on David Korn and Michael Isikoff's reporting. I'm sure it didn't. Before and after Steele was terminated as a source, he maintained contact with DOJ via then Associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr did not work on the Mueller investigation. Bruce Orr, he worked with Sally Yates. Shortly after the election, the FBI began interviewing Orr, documenting his communications with Steele. Steele admitted to Orr his feelings against candidate Trump when he said he was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and passionate about him not being president. Well, who wasn't? But then it goes on to explain that the application also mentions information regarding fellow Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos and how he told the Australians and the Australians told the United States. Hello?
Clear for takeoff.
Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show. Independent media is the future, and Randi's leading the way. And it's ironic, the more freedom she gained, the more expensive it got. It's crucial now, more than ever, to keep this show pure and free of corporate influence so Randi can tell the hard truths. The first step to change is an unbiased media, and for that, we need your help. So please, go to randirhodes.com/support and subscribe, you bastards.
Gobble, gobble, it's time for more turkey. Oh yeah, all natural turkey jerky from Herky Jerky. That has been a hit ever since they introduced it in late 2017, that turkey jerky, because it's got no nitrates, no artificial ingredients, no MSG, preservatives, and no fat. The turkey jerky is the perfect snack any time of day. And, oh my God, it's absolutely delicious. It's bite-sized pieces of fresh turkey. It's meat that tastes just like the oven-roasted bird that you had on Thanksgiving. It's got just the right amount of everything: salt, smoke, flavoring, and spices. It's unlike anything you've ever had, and they don't skimp. They're going to send you a 14-ounce bag that is going to keep you munching for a long time. Nothing like those wimpy 3-ounce gas station bags. And all this month, $6 off every bag of turkey jerky, and there is no promo code needed. So you get free shipping with 2 bags or more of anything you order in the Herky Jerky store, including Smokies, bacon, beef, buffalo, elk, and venison jerky and sticks. February is the perfect time. Stock up on all the delicious products from Herky Jerky, especially the scrumptious turkey jerky. Order it today at herkyjerky.com.
Hello, Progressive Voices Tune-In listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
So our heads are spinning a little bit, but we got to march on here. But let's start with the Trump administration plan to create a new division within the Health and Human Services Department that would promote discrimination by medical workers against a patient's right to receive medical care under the cover of moral or religious beliefs. How is this possible?
It's just a very transparent way of saying that those healthcare workers who choose not to help women with abortion services or other contraceptive services or any of the other things that people might object to. I've had people point out that it could be used as a cover for people to say, I don't support lesbian and gay people, so therefore I don't want to treat those people. It really is not an ethical way, as most nurses would certainly object to that, saying that, gee, for this patient, maybe I have a moral objection to what their opinion on a religion is or a social issue, therefore I can deny them care.
And the real thing here is, as a nurse and certainly as a doctor, you take an oath that you are going to treat everyone and that you aren't going to discriminate against anyone. So this goes against our moral and ethical beliefs. So let's talk about the ramifications of the tax bill on Medicare and Medicaid.
Big cuts to Medicare and big cuts to all of the social safety net in this country. Now, Congress is saying that they're going to wait to take a slap at benefits for seniors and the disabled who are on Medicare until after they get themselves back in office again. We all need to be very vigilant about saying Medicare needs to be not cut at all.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
If you take Devin Nunes's statements about the memo and about the ongoing investigation, and you look at the weirdly constructed statement that is about to be released, apparently, what about Devin Nunes obstructing justice?
Really?
I think there is probably a credible case involving Nunes as well, not just in what we know publicly, but in conversations that no doubt took place between him and the White House, which evidently was involved in drafting that 3.5-page memo. What we don't know is all of those private communications, and as you well know, Nunes himself was under investigation by the House Ethics Committee for the unprecedented and hugely embarrassing visits he had with the White House just a year or so ago. So there is a lot there that I think could come back to haunt him.
Seriously, he's in so much trouble. It's unbelievable. I can't even believe this. And when you ask people about whether or not they think the White House, intelligence people, whether or not they think the White House was consulted when they were drafting this ridiculous, nonsensical. I mean, it makes no sense. Let me just read you the last paragraph of this memo, because this is where they just destroy themselves. In their own freaking cherry-picked memo, they destroy their own argument in paragraph 5. They say, the Page FISA application also mentions information regarding fellow Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos. The Papadopoulos information triggered the opening of an FBI counterintelligence investigation in late July 2016 by FBI agent Peter Strzok. So there's a counterintelligence investigation opened in July, and they apply for a warrant 3 months into this counterintelligence investigation against Carter Page. Also, Papadopoulos is telling the Australian, intel officer that Russia has dirt on Hillary Clinton and that the Trump campaign is interested in getting it. Also, we know that in June, there was a meeting in Trump Tower with Trump Jr. and Jared and Manafort and Natalia Veselnitskaya and, the Agararov's representative. I mean, all these, it's ridiculous. Anyway, Strzok was reassigned by the special counsel's office to FBI Human Resources for improper text messages with his mistress, FBI attorney Lisa Page, no known relationship to Carter Page, where they both demonstrated a clear bias against Trump and in favor of Clinton. Really, so when Peter Strzok wrote on October 27th to James Comey and told James Comey that he needed to reopen the Clinton email investigation, I guess he was trying to, get Trump, he actually caused the complete collapse of Hillary Clinton's poll numbers 11 days before an election. He wrote that to James Comey on October 27th. On October 28th, James Comey sends a letter to Congress saying, yes, I'm reopening the Hillary Clinton investigation. And he does. On that same day, minutes after he writes a memo to the leaders of the House and the Senate in the intel community and the justice, on the judiciary committees, Jason Chaffetz leaks it out to the press. From October 28th until Election Day, that's all you heard. Because that investigation wasn't closed until 2 days before the election when, Comey said there were no new emails on Anthony Weiner's computer. This is why I spent so many days going over this. But Strzok is biased against Donald Trump, right? Strzok is the one who wrote them. I mean, how in the world can you have it both ways? Strzok literally tells Comey to reopen the Clinton investigation. But prior to reopening the Clinton investigation, they've already started a counterintelligence investigation into Donald Trump. So basically, what we had as an American voter, we had to choose between two people, both under FBI investigation, one under a counterintelligence investigation, and that would be Donald Trump. And that's what we got to pick from in 2016. That's amazing, really. But he says clearly demonstrated a bias against Trump in favor of Clinton, whom Strzok had also investigated. Yeah, and Strzok was the one who wrote the memo saying reopen the email, and it did happen. The Strzok-Lisa Page text also reflects extensive discussions about the investigation, orchestrating leaks to the media, and including a meeting with Deputy Director McCabe to discuss an insurance policy against President Trump's election. Well, that was some strange insurance he bought there. What was it? Insurance like you buy this insurance after the crash? I don't even get it. This is the man that wrote the memo to Comey saying reopen, and Comey freaking does. Dianne Feinstein said, why did you reopen? Here's his answer.
Why was it necessary to announce 11 days before a presidential election that you were opening an investigation on a new computer without any knowledge of what was in that computer? Why didn't you just do the investigation as you would normally with no public announcement?
Yeah, great question, Senator. Thank you. October 27th, the investigative team that had finished the investigation in July, focused on Secretary Clinton's emails, asked to meet with me. So I met with them that morning, late morning, in my conference room, and they laid out for me what they could see from the metadata on this fella Anthony Weiner's laptop that had been seized in an unrelated case. What they could see from the metadata was that there were thousands of Secretary Clinton's emails on that device, including what they thought might be the missing emails from her first 3 months as Secretary of State. We never found any emails from her first 3 months. She was using a Verizon BlackBerry then, and that's obviously very important because if there was evidence that she was acting with bad intent, that's where it would be in the first 3 months.
But they weren't there.
Look, can I just finish my answer, Senator?
Yeah.
And so they came in and said, we can see thousands of emails from the Clinton email domain, including many, many, many from the Verizon Clinton domain, BlackBerry domain. They said, we think we got to get a search warrant to go get these. And the Department of Justice agreed we had to go get a search warrant.
Okay, let me just pause it there, okay? Because I'm going to play you his full answer. Now we know the team that called him in and said, oh, look, from the metadata, we can see thousands. It was Strozak. And Strozak was the one who was telling him, and so was that team in New York telling him that he had to reopen the Hillary investigation on October 27th. Now we all know that the FBI in New York had that computer since October 3rd. Actually, they probably had it in August or September. And they didn't tell Comey, and they didn't get a search warrant for it. They sat on it for 3 weeks. If anything, this was a highly politicized New York bureau that was sitting on evidence, leaking it to Rudy Giuliani, leaking this information to James Kallstrom, to the point where Rudy Giuliani goes on Lars Larson's radio show on October 28th and goes on Fox News the day before and says, we got an October surprise. You won't believe it. This is going to make even the pollsters sit up. We're going to crash her poll numbers. Because the polls were right. She was going to win. Except for this. Comey wasn't told about the existence of this computer until October 27th, even though New York had it since August or late September and didn't even bother to tell him about it until October 3rd. Pretended they were doing forensics on it. Didn't. Only looked at metadata, which is like if you do a search of your inbox and you put in a word you're looking for, that's, what you'll get. Just the results. You won't get the whole thing. You'll just get the results, right? Like a Control F type thing. They never, ever did the forensics on that computer. They then handed over to Comey on October 28th. Okay?
So I agreed. I authorized them to seek a search warrant, and then I faced a choice. And I've lived my entire career by the tradition that if you can possibly avoid it, you avoid any action in the run-up to an election that might have an impact, whether it's a dog catcher election or president of the United States. But I sat there that morning, and I could not see a door labeled no action here. I could see two doors, and they were both actions. One was labeled speak, the other was labeled conceal. Because here's how I thought about it. I'm not trying to talk you into this, but I want you to know my thinking. Having repeatedly told this Congress, we are done and there's nothing there, there's no case there, there's no case there, to restart in a hugely significant way, potentially finding the emails that would reflect on her intent from the beginning and not speak about it would require an act of concealment, in my view. And so I stared at speak and conceal. Speak would be really bad. There's an election in 11 days. Yeah. Lordy, that would be really bad.
Lordy.
Concealing, in my view, would be catastrophic, not just to the FBI, but well beyond. And honestly, as between really bad and catastrophic, I said to my team, we've got to walk into the world of really bad. I've got to tell Congress that we're restarting this, not in some frivolous way, in a hugely significant way. And the team also told me, we cannot finish this work before the election. And then they worked night after night after night, and they found thousands of new emails. They found classified information on Anthony Weiner. Somehow, her emails are being forwarded to Anthony Weiner, including classified information by her assistant, Huma Abedin. And so they found thousands of new emails and then called me the Saturday night before the election and said, thanks to the wizardry of our technology, we've only had to personally read 6,000. We think we can finish tomorrow morning, Sunday. And so I met with them. And they said, we found a lot of new stuff. We did not find anything that changes our view of her intent. So we're in the same place we were in July. It hasn't changed our view. And I asked them lots of questions. And I said, okay.
One of the questions you should have asked him is, why did they wait for you to get the search warrant? Why didn't New York get the search warrant? You see? And they weren't done with their work until Sunday. And then Monday, he announces that there's nothing there, nothing new. Same place we were in July when we concluded that there was nothing indictable here, no intent here to subvert national security or do any crazy thing that they were accusing her of. Just very bad email practices, just really, bad hygiene on the email. Okay? And he announces that on Monday. Tuesday was the election.
Okay, if that's where you are, then I also have to tell Congress that we're done. Look, this was terrible.
Yeah.
It makes me mildly nauseous to think that we might have had some impact on the election. But honestly, it wouldn't change the decision. Everybody who disagrees with me has to come back to October 28th with me and stare at this and tell me what you would do. Would you speak or would you conceal? And I could be wrong, but we honestly made a decision between those two choices that even in hindsight, and this has been one of the world's most painful experiences, I would make the same decision. I would not conceal that on October 28th from the Congress. And I sent a letter to Congress. By the way, people forget this. I didn't make a public announcement. I sent a private letter to the chairs and the rankings of the oversight committees. I know it's a distinction without a difference in the world of leaks, but it was very important that I tell them instead of concealing. And reasonable people can disagree, but that's the reason I made that choice. And it was a hard choice. I still believe in retrospect the right choice, as painful as this has been. And I'm sorry for the long answer.
Well, let me respond. On the letter, it was just a matter of minutes before the world knew about it.
Thanks, Jason Chavez.
My understanding, and staff has just said to me, that you didn't get a search warrant before making the announcement.
Hello.
I think that's right. I think I authorized, and the Department of Justice agreed we were going to seek a search warrant. I actually don't see it as a meaningful distinction.
Well, it's very hard. It would have been, you took an enormous gamble. The gamble was that there was something there that would invalidate her candidacy, and there wasn't. So one has to look at that action and say, did it affect the campaign? And I think most people who have looked at this say, yes, it did affect the campaign. Why would he do it? And was there any conflict among your staff? People saying do it, people saying don't do it, as has been reported?
No, there was a great debate. I have a fabulous staff at all levels, and one of my junior lawyers said, should you consider that what you're about to do may help elect Donald Trump president? And I said, thank you for raising that. Not for a moment, because down that path lies the death of the FBI as an independent institution in America.
Where's Rudy? Where is Rudy Giuliani? Where is he? Because he's the one that forced the delay in getting a search warrant for that computer. I mean, I really wish that Dianne Feinstein knew then what we now know. And I really wish she would have asked, why didn't the New York Bureau that seized Anthony Weiner's computer get the search warrant when they took the computer back in August, September, or October, early October? That's the question. And we've never gotten an answer to that question. Rudy Giuliani knows the answer to that question. I bet you Pete Strozak knows it too. A lot of people know the answer to that question. James Kallstrom knows the answer to that question. This was to kill Hillary Clinton's chances, and it worked. It did.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randi's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randi's house. You know, eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randi was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please go to randyrhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
I'm David Pakman, host of The David Pakman Show on the Progressive Voices channel. Check out this clip from my show. It just so happens that the Republican National Committee's finance chair, up until very recently, is casino mogul Steve Wynn. And Steve Wynn is now facing accusations of decades of sexual misconduct, and he has since resigned his position as finance chair of the RNC. And one of the allegations against him is that he forced a woman to have sex with him in 2005. Now, I call that rape. Like when you force someone to have sex with you, I think that's what we call rape. And this generally was his MO. He reportedly for a long time has been pressuring employees to have sex with him. He's committed allegedly endless numbers of acts of sexual misconduct. One of the women involved was a manicurist who reached a $7.5 million settlement with Wynn after he forced her to have sex with him, which I believe means he raped her. Steve Wynn isn't admitting anything. He says these are all stories concocted or fueled by his ex-wife, Elaine Wynn, who he's in a nasty divorce proceeding with. And in their investigation, the Wall Street Journal contacted 150 people. And a lot of those people said when we were working at one of his facilities, when we knew he was on his way to where we were, we would actually hide. Is it that hard not to sexually harass or assault women? Like I've somehow gotten through my life without even like a close call of sexual harassment. Apparently for some people, it's really, really tough. And I actually have plenty of Steve Wynn stories. The conference that I go to in Las Vegas twice a year, one of those times each year, it's held at the Wynn. And I bumped into Steve Wynn a bunch of times. And once he and a woman he was with and a couple other people sat down right next to me and Sam Cedar and some other progressive media people at a restaurant at the Wynn Hotel. And he was, of course, with a woman who seems much, much younger than he is. She didn't seem particularly thrilled to be there, but it wasn't super well lit. So maybe I was just misreading her facial expression. His bodyguard sat at the next table over, and I can't imagine there's really that much. Like, he's not even that recognizable, even in his own hotel, by his staff, obviously, but his bodyguards go with him. They sit at the next table over and have themselves a nice steak dinner. And
if you and other progressive hosts were at a table right next to him, I think the bodyguards are right to be there right next to him.
Oh, yeah, they should be concerned. If Sam Cedar all of a sudden is sidling up next to Steve Wynn, and once I was almost knocked down by his bodyguards, actually, later on in the evening, we were hanging out in the casino area, and all of a sudden, Scott Millican, producer extraordinaire of Ring of Fire, he grabs me by the elbow and pulls me out of the way, and I'm just unclear, or I have no idea what's going on. And as that's happening, Wynn's bodyguards are just like moving people out of the way because Steve Wynn was walking through. So it was either get pulled out of the way by Scott Millican of Ring of Fire, or potentially get trampled by Steve Wynn's bodyguards at the Wynn. And that would have made for an interesting story, but it would not probably have been super fun.
They're like Moses parting the seas, it seems.
They were, yeah. I mean, basically, I think that's how he thinks of himself. Like the equivalent of the Red Sea parts when he walks around his own casinos anyway. So yeah, he's gone now after allegations of decades of sexual assault. What do you think? Sad? Should we be happy about that?
Well,
inconsequential?
The next chapter of the Me Too movement, I guess. It's hitting politics. It's hitting entertainment.
It's
Who knows
hitting
what
the casino
next
world.
will be.
Yeah. Steve Wynn, I don't even know what to say as a send-off, but he will no longer be the RNC finance chair. You've been listening to part of The David Pakman Show on the Progressive Voices channel. For full audio and video podcasts, interviews, and more, go to davidpakman.com and check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The David Pakman Show.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Another rumor that I get is there's a kind of revolution going on inside the FBI about the original conclusion being completely unjustified and almost a slap in the face of the FBI's integrity. And I know that from former agents. I know that even from a few active agents who obviously don't want to identify themselves.
That was October 28th. It was the same day. Same day that Comey, sent a letter. This happened in the morning on Lars Larson's radio show. And then by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Comey released what Pete Strzok told him he wanted him to release. And that was a letter to Congress saying that they were reopening up the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Donald Trump was, Comey showed so much courage and he was such a great guy and blah, 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 and this and that. And then he asked for a pledge of loyalty after he became president through the unwitting participation of James Comey in this crazy, Rudy Giuliani October surprise, right? And then he fires him. Why? Because Comey was investigating the New York FBI at that point. That's what Patrick Leahy said to him many months later. He asked James Comey, how did Rudy Giuliani have this pipeline to the New York Bureau of the FBI? How did James Kallstrom know what was coming? And Comey says, I don't know yet. Is it but I'm very interested in finding the answer. And he says, are you going to you're doing some sort of a review of this? And he said, correct. And that's why Comey was fired. Comey was fired because Comey was honing in on the New York FBI, Rudy Giuliani, James Kallstrom conspiracy to upend this election. That's why.
Your investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. A number of surrogates like Rudy Giuliani claimed to have a pipeline to the FBI. He boasted that, and I quote, numerous agents talked to him all the time, close quote, regarding the investigation. He even said that he had insinuated he had advance warning about the emails described in your October letter.
October 28th.
Former FBI agent Jim Kallstrom made similar claims. Now, either they're lying or there's a serious problem within the Bureau. Did anybody in the FBI during this 2016 campaign have contact with Rudy Giuliani about the Clinton investigation?
I don't know yet. But if I find out that people were leaking information about our investigations, whether to reporters or to private parties, there'll be severe consequences.
Did you know of anything from Jim Kallstrom?
Same answer. I don't know yet.
Yet.
You know anything from other former agents?
I don't know yet. But it's a matter that I'm very, very interested in.
But you are looking into it?
Correct.
And once you have found that answer, will you provide it to us?
I'll provide it to the committee in some form. I don't know whether I would say it publicly, but I'd find some way to let you know.
Thank you. I hope you're still going to let them know. I hope everybody at the FBI, Andy McCabe, whose head is now on the chopping block, Rod Rosenstein, who I'm not a fan of these Republican dudes, but they are Republican dudes who are at the Department of Justice and the FBI. And Chris Wray is the head of the FBI, also a Republican dude. Somebody needs to actually let Congress know whatever happened to looking into the New York FBI, which reopened the whole Hillary Clinton email case, but not hurriedly. They had a computer for many, many weeks, and they sat on it, and they did get a warrant. But then, 11 days before the election, Strzok writes this memo to Comey going, we have to reopen the investigation. Why? Oh, now Rudy Giuliani is on the radio saying that the former and current FBI agents are leaking to him, and James Kallstrom has been intimating that they're leaking to him and that they're going to do it themselves. You got to do it. This is why he had a dilemma: conceal or talk, and he had to let Congress know that he was doing it. He had to protect the FBI. And he also had another investigation underway at the same time. Oh, yeah.
As you know, our practice is not to confirm the existence of ongoing investigations, especially those investigations that involve classified matters. But in unusual circumstances, where it is in the public interest, it may be appropriate to do so, as Justice Department policies recognize. This is one of those circumstances. I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts. As with any counterintelligence investigation, This will also include an assessment of whether any crimes were committed. Because it is an open, ongoing investigation and is classified, I cannot say more about what we are doing and whose conduct we are examining. At the request of congressional leaders, we have taken the extraordinary step, in coordination with the Department of Justice, of briefing this Congress's leaders, including the leaders of this committee, in a classified setting in detail about the investigation.
Shouldn't have done that. No. I know he has to, but, they're the ones that actually, wrote this memo. But, Comey, my boyfriend, he did tweet this morning. He saw the memo, too, and he wrote, "That's it? That's it? Dishonest and misleading memo wrecked the House Intel Committee, destroyed trust with the Intel community, damaged relationship with FISA court, inexcusably exposed classified investigation of an American citizen." For what? DOJ and FBI? Keep doing your jobs. I mean, this is really what was this memo? This is like it's like their biggest tool. Devin Nunes, their flunky on Capitol Hill, cherry-picked and distorted information to create the mistaken impression that a FISA warrant renewal, the renewal of it, the fourth renewal, was improperly handled. Even if that were true, it would be a nothing. It would be a big nothing burger. It would be nothing. No. This is Trump trying to destroy the FBI. This is Trump trying to destroy the Department of Justice. You know why? Because he's frustrated with it. He's frustrated with DOJ. He's been frustrated with FBI. Why? Because he's not allowed to meddle. He can't control them. He couldn't control Comey from saying that. He can't control, he thinks he's the mayor of New York City. He doesn't realize he's president of the United States. Donald Trump really thinks that he's still back in corrupt old New York City during the 80s when he had a corrupt mayor and a corrupt police force, and he could put ads in the paper calling for the death penalty for innocent individuals because they were black and brown guys. He really thinks that he can control law enforcement and he can control the executive branch and you can't. He can't. He's not allowed to touch the FBI. He's not even supposed to be talking to the Department of Justice. He's not supposed to be calling the FBI director. He's not supposed to be calling Jeff Sessions. These are not his lawyers, okay? These are lawyers for the American people. And the counterintelligence role that the FBI plays, this is what I really want you to take from this. No one could be happier about the destruction of the counterintelligence investigation into Russia's meddling in the United States in the 2016 election than Russia. Destroying the FBI, destroying our Department of Justice makes Putin giddy because it is the FBI that surveils Russian agents. It is the FBI that gets FISA warrants. It is the Department of Justice who signs off on them as well. And they are the ones who protect us from foreign agents and foreign adversaries. And the more Donald Trump disintegrates the DOJ and the FBI, the happier Putin's got to be. Now, I just want to play one last clip here in this section, because this is really important. You might doubt me that there are actual intercepted phone calls between Michael Flynn and the Russians, between Jeff Sessions and the Russians. But Trey Gowdy, who's suddenly going to retire and probably end up on some court in South Carolina. Back in the day, Trey Gowdy was laying out the intercepts. Of course, his angle, his take, the reason why he was talking about intercepted phone calls was because he was upset about leaks and wanted reporters jailed for printing them, which is still the premise of this memo, that the media was leaking, they were getting information from Fusion and from Glenn, and that was what was It's not true, but there are intercepts, and that is what this counterintelligence investigation was predicated on.
In January of this year, the Washington Post reported, according to a senior U.S. government official, a named U.S. citizen, and I will not use the name, a named U.S. citizen, phoned the Russian ambassador several times on December the 29th.
Okay, now we know that's Michael Flynn.
In February of this year, the Washington Post, nine current and former officials who were in senior positions at multiple agencies at the time of the call spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss intelligence matters, and that officials began poring over intelligence reports, intercepted communications, and diplomatic cables. In February of this year, the New York Times reported a U.S. citizen, whose name I will not use, discusses sanctions with the Russian ambassador in a phone call, according to officials who have seen a transcript of the wire-tapped conversation. And again in February of this year, the New York Times reported on a phone call involving a U.S. citizen.
So that's 3.
Including significant discussions of phone records, intercepted calls, intercepted communications, and reported the NSA captured calls and then asked the FBI to collect as much information as possible. My time is up, so I will say this for this round. I thought it was against the law to disseminate classified information. Is it?
Oh, yes, sure. It's a serious crime. I'm not going to comment on those particular articles because I don't want to, in any circumstance, compound a criminal act by confirming that it was classified information. But in general, yes, it's a serious crime, and it should be, for the reasons you said.
We'll take it back up next round, Mr. Chairman.
Wait.
We'll go back to, I'll yield myself 15 minutes, and we'll go back to Mr. Gowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Comey, you and I were discussing the felonious dissemination of classified material during the last round. Is there an exception in the law for current or former U.S. officials who request anonymity?
To release classified information?
Yes, sir.
No.
Is there an exception in the law for reporters who want to break a story?
Now listen to this.
Well, that's a harder question as to whether a reporter incurs criminal liability by publishing classified information, and one probably beyond my ken. I'm not as good a lawyer as Mr. Schiff said I used to be.
Well, I don't know about that, but the statute does use the word publish, doesn't it?
It does, but that's a question I know the Department of Justice has struggled with through administration after administration.
I know the Department struggled with it, the Fourth Circuit struggled with it, lots of people have struggled with it, but you're not aware of an exception in the current dissemination of classified information statute that carves out an exception for reporters.
No, I'm not aware of anything carved out in the statute. I don't think a reporter has been prosecuted, certainly in my lifetime, though.
So Idiot Boy is actually giving us what we want to know, and that is whether or not this memo is accurate. Was the FISA court provided intercepts of several conversations with Russians, or is it what Devin Nunes says, that the FISA court only relied on the dossier, the dodgy dossier? Yeah. Well, apparently the Republicans, like Trey Gowdy in the House, they know the answer to that question. And so in order for them to have put out this bogus memo saying that the FISA court only had the dossier to rely on in order to start a wiretap against a guy who's been on the FBI's radar screen since 2013 in the counterintelligence world of the FBI, Carter Page, they're obstructing. They're trying to destroy our FBI. They're trying. Why? To protect a guilty president. This is a very sick story. But now, as it progresses, we can go back and listen to this testimony, and now we understand what they're talking about. Now, they had intercepts of Flynn. They had intercepts of Carter Page. They had intercepts of Jeff Sessions talking to Russians. That's why a counterintelligence operation was started.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
Tonight, I'm calling on Congress to produce a bill that generates at least $1.5 trillion for the new Infrastructure Investment
that our country so desperately needs.
In his first State of the Union, Trump proposes big infrastructure spending. But there's a catch.
FEMA says, oops.
FEMA is not ending emergency food and water distribution in Puerto Rico. Maine's governor bans all new wind energy projects. Plus,
there is tremendous urgency in our need to act.
New Jersey's new governor goes all in on offshore wind and cutting carbon emissions.
All of those stories and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
To everyone still recovering in Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, we are with you, we love you, and we always will pull through together.
That is going to be a comforting message to the people of Puerto Rico once they have electricity to turn on their TVs.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, big news with Trump's first State of the Union address, but bigger news, I think, in Puerto Rico.
Yes, some very good news. Contrary to news reports, FEMA says it is not shutting off food and water aid to Puerto Rico. A FEMA spokesman said Wednesday that an official mistakenly said distribution of emergency food and water aid was going to conclude. That caused a huge uproar since, of course, nearly 1 million Puerto Ricans are still without electricity more than 4 months after Hurricane Maria hit.
It was not a mistake. They announced they were going to stop emergency food and water to Puerto Rico, but I'm glad they've backtracked. So,
indeed.
I'll shut up.
Meanwhile, President Trump said nothing about climate change or the environment in his first State of the Union address on Tuesday.
I'm shocked.
But he did praise himself and his administration for rolling back clean air and clean water regulations and undoing President Obama's climate and energy policies. And he also apparently doesn't include the booming U.S. clean energy industry in his definition of American energy.
We have ended the war on American energy, and we have ended the war on beautiful, clean coal.
Now, it's an inconvenient truth that the U.S. coal industry remains in terminal decline because of the U.S. natural gas industry and the rise of renewable energy, and the Obama administration is responsible for the tiny amount of clean coal technology that currently exists in the United States. Trump also floated an impressive-sounding $1.5 trillion plan to repair the nation's aging infrastructure. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch with this guy.
In past decades, the federal government would put up 80% of the cost of major infrastructure projects. But Trump's plan offers up only $200 billion in federal funding. That's less than 20% of the cost, stretched out over 10 years.
Every federal dollar should be leveraged by partnering with state and local governments and, where appropriate, tapping into private sector investment to permanently fix the infrastructure deficit.
So he's going to force state and local governments to pay for the bulk of this, along with private companies who will profit from this infrastructure, correct?
Exactly. That means that cash-strapped states and cities will have to either raise taxes, sell off public assets, or privatize those projects to raise the money. Now, that could be a hard sell, since Trump's $1.5 trillion infrastructure proposal could have been paid for by the $1.5 trillion tax cut that was passed by Republicans just last month.
Good point.
Meanwhile, in New Jersey, 6 years ago, former Republican Governor Chris Christie withdrew from a multi-state cap-and-trade compact called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI. On Monday, the state's new Democratic governor, Phil Murphy, began the process of re-entering RGGI. The cap-and-trade system raises revenue by incentivizing polluters to cut their carbon emissions. A recent study calculated that in the 6 years after leaving RGGI, New Jersey lost out on $250 million in revenue.
And as I broke in an exclusive at the time back in 2011 when I obtained secret audio tapes of Chris Christie addressing the Koch brothers, it was in fact after meeting with David Koch that Chris Christie decided to pull out of that regional greenhouse gas initiative.
Yep, and also on Wednesday, Governor Murphy signed an executive order expanding and accelerating construction of wind energy projects off the Jersey Shore.
Clean energy and good jobs. This is how we make our economy stronger and fairer.
Murphy also said the ambitious target increases the likelihood that wind turbine manufacturers will choose to build factories in New Jersey to supply those projects. But finally, Maine's Republican Governor Paul LePage is going in the opposite direction. LePage, a longtime critic of wind energy, signed an executive order banning all new wind energy projects in Maine to, quote, protect its natural beauty, but he's totally okay with offshore drilling.
Congratulations once again to Paul LePage, the nation's dumbest governor. For much more on all of these stories, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Against the wind. I'm still running against the wind.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Magnificent mosaic that is American radio. I have a dream. Change has come to America. Believe me. Who's there? Who's there? Imagination.
Turn up your mind. Ready to go down this rabbit hole? Because if you want to take this memo seriously, there are plenty of conspiracies you seemingly need to also take seriously to make this memo actually factual. For instance, you got to believe that Russia colluded with the Democrats to undermine Trump's candidacy. And then you got to believe that they planted bogus information in Fusion GPS's so-called Steele dossier. And then you got to believe that gave the FBI an excuse to continue spying on the Trump campaign. And you got to believe that got Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein involved, which, of course, his involvement meant to approve an application to continue to spy on a former member of the Trump campaign, all of which approved by a FISA court judge. All of that was part of an effort to take down the president. Now, if that's not a big enough conspiracy, there are a bunch of other conspiracies that you have to believe in order to prop the one I just told you about. Maybe you believe the DNC and John Podesta both hacked themselves. Maybe you believe all of the Trump-Russia intelligence, CIA, FBI, all of it was somehow falsified. Maybe you believe the FBI was always in the tank for Hillary Clinton. Maybe you believe James Comey's ham-handed handling of her email investigation was all an elaborate ruse to avoid having his cover blown about how he was secretly somehow helping Clinton as he was hurting her candidacy. Maybe you believe Trump's own employees are also in on this whole thing. So let's review the case. Yeah. Russia, the U.S. intelligence community, the U.S. investigators, the courts, and the president's own appointees at the Justice Department. All of them part of this conspiracy to take down the president. Folks, you may not take that literally, but a lot of people are taking everything I just said about in this rabbit hole very seriously.
And that is just plain sad. Thank you, Chuck Todd, MSNBC. Thank you very much. Oh, my God. I mean, really? So Comey was really a Hillary plant, and he reopened up the email investigation to help her? To help her? Well, then he would be the stupidest man alive. And, of course, the stupidest man alive is Devin Nunes. So there's a big competition for that. And there is no way that the New York FBI and Rudy Giuliani didn't sit on Anthony Weiner's computer until 11 days before the election and then hand it over to James Comey without a warrant even applied for, so that it would take him 6 days to go through it. And then the investigation would end literally the Monday before the Tuesday election. I mean, this is crazy. And that's why I'm telling you, Devin. Now, here's the thing. Paul Ryan, who is the Speaker of the House, he has the power to take Devin Nunes out of the chairmanship of the House Intelligence Committee. You know, it's Devin Nunes versus intelligence, which is a no-brainer for me. I mean, how do you even put Trump and intelligence in the same sentence now apply it to Devin Nunes? This is ridiculous. This is an absolute ridiculous memo. And why did they do it? They did this all to destroy law enforcement. They did it. The law and order people are literally anti-law. anti-law enforcement. They are literally the people who are always on the hunt for terrorists. There's a terrorist everywhere. Terrorist. They are literally destroying the FBI's counterintelligence abilities. They are literally destroying the Department of Justice's counterintelligence abilities and the FISA court. They've also said the FISA court. Now, the FISA judges are appointed by the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, who last time I checked was a real Republican. I mean, seriously, I was so against the appointment, but it got made by Bush, okay? And that's who appoints the FISA judges. And now they're saying that the FISA judges were in on it too. They're dirty too. That also hampers our ability to do foreign intelligence surveillance because it's called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Holy crap. And just so you know what's all involved in getting a warrant, here's Comey explaining to you.
The way 702 works is, under that provision of the statute, the FISA court, federal judges, authorize us as U.S. agencies to collect the communications of non-U.S. people that we believe to be overseas if they're using American infrastructure. The criticism the FBI has gotten and the feedback we've gotten consistently since 9/11 is you have to make sure you're in a position to connect the dots. You can't have stovepiped information. And so we've responded to that over the last 10 years, mostly to the great work of my predecessor, Bob Mueller, and we have confederated databases so that if we collect information under 702, it doesn't sit in a separate stovepipe. It sits in a single cloud-type environment so that if I'm opening an investigation in the United States in a terrorism matter, an intelligence matter, or a criminal matter, and I have a name of the suspect and their telephone number and their email addresses, I search the FBI's databases. That search necessarily will also touch the information that was collected under 702 so that we don't miss a dot, but nobody gets access to the information that sits in the 702 database unless they've been trained correctly. If there is, let's imagine that terrorists overseas were talking about a suspect in the United States, or someone's email address in the United States was in touch with that terrorist, and that information sits in the 702 database. When we open the case in the United States and put in that name and that email address, it will touch that data and tell us there's information in the 702 database that's relevant. If the agent doing the query is properly trained on how to handle that, he or she will be able to see that information. If they're not properly trained, they'll be alerted that there is information. Then they have to go get the appropriate training and the appropriate oversight to be able to see it.
Now, that's 702, okay? That's how you start a warrant against Kislyak, or that's how you start a warrant against a foreigner, okay? And those warrants were issued against Kislyak. Those warrants are routinely issued against Russian spies and all that. And incidentally, they picked up Michael Flynn talking to people who were being routinely. But let's destroy that. Let's destroy that FISA court that puts all of these, checks and balances where you have to have the Department of Justice, you have to have the FBI, you have to have the judicial branch all agreeing and signing off with their right names to authorize the surveillance, a warranted surveillance of a known terrorist or a known a spy from another country. And if that person gets a 702 warrant issued against them and then they're talking to an American, well, then what we do is we mask the name of the American until the agents or the Department of Justice or the court can decipher whether or not that person was doing something with malintent or to harm the United States. And if it's discovered that that person in America, the American citizen who was talking to a terrorist or a spy, was doing it with malintent or was doing it to corroborate or to collude or to cooperate with a plan to attack the United States, let's say on our election system, then that person's name would be unmasked. And that is what happened with Michael Flynn. And he should have known that because he was the director of national intelligence. And that's what makes it so heinous. There are so many, but let's get rid of the FISA court. Let's get rid of every. And why do we even have a FISA court? It's because law enforcement was abusing its wiretapping authority under JFK, LBJ, Richard Nixon, they were wiretapping Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights activists. They were wiretapping Vietnam War protesters, okay? That is when we created a separate, warranted phone tap of any American, and then a FISA court for foreign intelligence warrants. But let's get rid of all that and go back to where Trump can, routinely surveil anybody he wants to give him control of the FBI and to make J. Edgar Hoover live again. Seriously, this is what he's doing. You know, everybody says, oh, he's doing it to damage the FBI, and he's doing, but nobody has explained to you in what way. Here's the way. The way is he liked it back in the day. He liked it when it was a corrupt government that could wiretap political enemies. That is exactly what LBJ did. That is exactly what Richard Nixon did. JFK to a lesser extent, but that is what they did. They had these programs, COINTELPRO, and they wiretapped anybody that they believed was a perceived enemy of their agenda. So when JFK was not prepared to do the Civil Rights Act, they're wiretapping Martin Luther King Jr. During the pushback on the Vietnam War, LBJ is wiretapping Vietnam protesters. Richard Nixon, too. J. Edgar Hoover was still left in place. He was left in place until he died. He died in 1972. And after that, that's when we got this the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And it said you need a warrant. Now, remember who Jim Comey is. How do we know Jim Comey so well? Well, back in the Bush days, there was an attorney general. His name was John Ashcroft. And John Ashcroft had a gallbladder attack. And he was going under the knife. And he was on a lot of pain meds after the surgery. And he was not lucid. He was not able to sign anything. Because you can't sign something when you're not lucid. Can't sign something drunk. Can't sign something stoned. Can't sign something when you're under anesthesia or coming out of it. You can't. And Bush wanted warrantless wiretapping back. This is a Republican wet dream to do warrantless wiretapping. I remember because I was on the air during all this. And the Bush guys ran over to John Ashcroft's hospital room. And as Attorney General, they wanted him to sign off on Bush's warrantless wiretapping law. Somebody in that room understood what was going on and called James Comey, the acting director, because Ashcroft had to step aside for the few days that he was going to be ill and under the influence. So Comey was the acting director. Comey ran to John Ashcroft's hotel room, to his hospital room, and refused to allow the warrantless wiretapping law to be signed by John Ashcroft. And that is when Comey became my boyfriend. That is when he became a hero. If anybody doesn't want bogus warrants, warrantless warrants, illegal interception of American citizens' phone calls or whatever, it is James Comey. And so that fact right there must tell you something. And what it should tell you is that James Comey was a straight shooter through this whole thing, and that it was the New York FBI that sat on this computer and forced him into reopening this Hillary Clinton email investigation, and that it's James Comey that was looking into the New York FBI, and that is why he got fired, and that it is James Comey that started a counterintelligence investigation into Russia's meddling. And at the time that he was doing it, he didn't believe that Trump was under investigation, as he testified to 1,000 times. He did not believe that Trump, he said Trump was not under investigation. So Trump fires Comey, and guess what? Idiot boy is now under investigation for obstruction of justice. This is crazy, right? But all Trump wants is the ability to wiretap his enemies, his perceived enemies. And so he sees an opportunity here, not just to go after, the law enforcement agencies because he's guilty of sin, which obviously is acting like a guilty person. I mean, what guilty person does this? But also, he believes in the end, he will win the right to wiretap his political enemies. And he will know everything about his political enemies. Same as Richard Nixon, same as LBJ, same as, JFK during the Civil Rights Movement when he wasn't ready to do. The Civil Rights Act didn't happen until after JFK was assassinated. Happened in 1964. JFK was assassinated in 1963. So this is what's going on. They're trying to damage it to keep Trump from being prosecuted and to warrantlessly wiretap Americans.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show. Independent media is the future and Randi's leading the way. And it's ironic, the more freedom she gained, the more expensive it got. It's crucial now, more than ever, to keep this show pure and free of corporate influence so Randi can tell the hard truths. The first step to change is an unbiased media, and for that, we need your help. So please, go to RandiRhodes.com/support and subscribe, you bastards.
Gobble, gobble, it's time for more turkey. Oh yeah, all natural turkey jerky from Herky Jerky. That has been a hit ever since they introduced it in late 2017, that turkey jerky, because it's got no nitrates, no artificial ingredients, no MSG, preservatives, and no fat. The turkey jerky is the perfect snack any time of day. And, oh my God, it's absolutely delicious. It's bite-sized pieces of fresh turkey. It's meat that tastes just like the oven-roasted bird that you had on Thanksgiving. It's got just the right amount of everything: salt, smoke, flavoring, and spices. It's unlike anything you've ever had, and they don't skimp. They're going to send you a 14-ounce bag that is going to keep you munching for a long time. Nothing like those wimpy 3-ounce gas station bags. And all this month, $6 off every bag of turkey jerky, and there is no promo code needed. So you get free shipping with 2 bags or more of anything you order in the Herky Jerky store, including Smokies, bacon, beef, buffalo, elk, and venison jerky and sticks. February is the perfect time. Stock up on all the delicious products from Herky Jerky, especially the scrumptious turkey jerky. Order it today at herkyjerky.com.
You're listening to the Progressive Voices Network, and here's a clip from Tara Buster with comedian Tara Devlin from RDTDaily.com.
So there is something fundamentally not right with right-wingers, and we know that. Like today when I posted my video, I posted a newsletter video every week, and I got a comment. Somebody commented, a scintillating right-winger and their scintillating comics. I think it was something like, F you, bitch. F you, liberal bitch. I mean, but they said it. F you, liberal bitch. And I deleted the person. I got him off the channel. I don't need that kind of abuse. But that's their comment. If a right winger ever had anything interesting to say, I think I might faint. But I did wonder, I have to say, that I would love to be a window into this person's world. I would love to see how they live. The fact is, right wingers, they all want the benefits of society, but none of the responsibilities. They just don't want to share. They don't want to share with brown people. That's what it's about. Because I can bet you that at some time in this person's life, they took advantage of the social safety net that liberal bitches like me made possible. This is Tara Devlin from RDTDaily.com. That was a clip from my show, Tara Buster, recorded live every Saturday evening on the RDT Daily Facebook page and streamed simultaneously on YouTube and Facebook Live. Replayed Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern on Progressive Voices, or anytime on demand on the Progressive Voices app. Support RDT Daily and the Progressive Voices Network. Remember, we stick together, we win.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Okay, I'm going to play you this clip for two reasons, okay? This is partly because Devin Nunes had declared that he was in possession of some intelligence that indicated that unmasking, which I've explained to you, of incidental collection going on against Russian adversaries who are incidentally talking to Americans. And that did happen, except their identities were not unmasked, okay? They were unmasked to the national security people in the Obama administration because the conversations were strange, but it was never leaked or anything like that. And so Devin Nunes decided to go out and tell everybody that the President, Obama, had unmasked members of the Trump campaign to the press. Then that never happened. And in fact, it turned out that Devin Nunes was not in possession of any intelligence at all, and he still isn't. He's just dumb as a rock. But that the White House was telling Devin Nunes what they wanted to have out there because Trump had tweeted over and over again that the Obama administration had wiretapped him and misspelled wiretapped. Remember that? Okay, so that became a big story. Devin Nunes held a press conference where he said he said he's not in possession, but he's seen intelligence that indicates that the Obama administration had wiretapped the Donald Trump campaign to undermine it. Turns out Devin Nunes was forced into admitting to the American people that, oh no, he had gone to the White House and the White House gave him information that they believed that Obama had ordered a wiretap. So James Comey was called to testify about that. Now, the reason why I'm playing this for you is because I want to debunk that completely so you'll understand why Devin Nunes was under an ethics investigation and why he should never be trusted to do anything that comes close to the Russia investigation. But also so you'll learn that a president right now cannot order anybody to be wiretapped. It's impossible. In our law, it's impossible. You need the Department of Justice to sign off. You need the FBI to sign off. And you need the FISA court. I mean, this is the most conservative court there is because Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts is the one who appoints these judges to sit on the FISA court. You can actually look and see who the members of the FISA court are and look at their biographies, and you'll see they're all a bunch of conservatives, okay? Appointed by a corporate attorney who's now our Chief Justice. But here, this explanation covers both those points, and so it's worthy of listening to.
The department has no information that supports those tweets.
The president accused Mr. Obama and presumably the FBI of engaging in McCarthyism. As you understand the term McCarthyism, do you think President Obama or the FBI was engaged in such conduct?
I'm not going to try and characterize the tweets themselves. All I can tell you is we have no information that supports them.
Were you engaged in McCarthyism, Director Comey?
Try very hard not to engage in any isms of any kind, including McCarthyism.
The president second stated, quote, "Is it legal for a sitting president to be wiretapping a race for president prior to an election? Turned down by a court earlier, a new low," unquote. Director Comey, can you answer the president's question? Would it be legal for President Obama to have ordered a wiretap of Donald Trump?
I'm not going to characterize or respond to the tweets themselves. I can tell you in general, as Admiral Rogers and I were just saying, there is a statutory framework in the United States under which courts grant permission for electronic surveillance, either in a criminal case or a national security case, based on a showing of probable cause, carefully overseen. It's a rigorous process that involves all three branches of government, and it's one we've lived with since the late 1970s. That's how it works. So no individual in the United States can direct electronic surveillance of anyone. It has to go through an application process, ask a judge. The judge can then make the order.
So President Obama could not unilaterally order a wiretap of anyone?
No president could.
That was so informational, wasn't it? I just love him. That was so informational because it takes all three branches of government, the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive, to actually present to a court the judicial branch, and the judicial branch can, with a finding of probable cause, issue a warrant to surveil. A president cannot do it. One individual cannot accomplish it. And so what Trump is trying to do is get rid of the FISA court so that he can warrantlessly wiretap all his political. How many times has Trump said he's so frustrated with the whole apparatus because, lock her up. He wants to investigate Hillary Clinton and he can't get an investigation going. And he's so frustrated because he's not supposed to be in touch with the Department of Justice, which he learned after Comey testified that he's not supposed to do because he had no clue. And the Republicans made excuses. Well, he's new. He doesn't know the procedure. He didn't know he wasn't supposed to call Comey at home and invite him to dinner by himself. He didn't know he was supposed to, keep people in the room, that he shouldn't have cleared the room to ask Comey if he was, ready to pledge loyalty to him. He didn't know that he's supposed to have the Attorney General present. He didn't know that he should. And then they made all these excuses for his really, really unlawful behavior at the beginning of the Trump administration, which came off of the Trump campaign where Michael Flynn was out there going, lock her up, lock her up. And now we know Michael Flynn was getting dirt on Hillary Clinton, delivered to Junior and the Trump campaign, and talking sanctions in exchange with the Russians on intercepted phone calls. And you want me to believe? You want me to believe that one person could have wiretapped Carter Page? Every time I hear Carter Page's name, I just think about going into the Oval Office and going, "You made me pop your eyeballs out to protect Charlie M." Oh my God, it's such a ridiculous story, and that's why I'm saying Devin Nunes just set himself up for obstruction of justice by putting out false information in this memo. It's just plain false, and it doesn't make any sense to anybody who's followed this story. Problem is, there are people who haven't followed this story. But I'm telling you, Trump wants the ability to wiretap whoever he wants so he can listen in and figure out who his political enemies are. And, the Russians couldn't be happier with the destruction of counterintelligence, operations within the FBI, within the National Security Agency, within the Department of Justice. I mean, this is like a gift on a silver platter. And that, they'll tell you, oh, well, the Russians are happy because America is divided and this. No. This is Russian domestic policy. First, we saw Russian foreign policy. We're going to pull out of NATO? Really? We're going to the president won't enforce sanctions against Russia as voted on by the Republican House and Senate and sent to his desk. He signed it, and now he won't enforce the law against Russia. And now the domestic attack begins. Okay? That's what this memo is. This is to get rid of Rod Rosenstein, of course, because the president is guilty and Rosenstein oversees Mueller. But it's a twofer. I used to always tell you nothing happens for any one reason. This is a twofer because if he can destroy the FBI and he can destroy the FISA court, there's no more warrants. He just wiretaps whoever the hell he wants, and we go back to J. Edgar Hoover style policing, which was a disaster. We had a president assassinated. This is crazy. We had a president impeached. We had another one assassinated. Want to go back to that? Where the FBI just, warrantlessly wiretaps the perceived political enemies, people who are opposed to a war or people who are opposed to, or are for civil rights. And then the nerve of them at their little retreat in West Virginia to stand up in front of the camera and go, this is a matter of civil liberties. The people, bite me. You hate civil liberties. You hate them so much that you want warrantless wiretaps, and you always have. And Comey is the exact pillar of justice that stands between warrantless wiretapping and this obviously cumbersome process that is required to wiretap an American citizen. All right, Rich in Denver.
Hey, Randy, first things first, I didn't know what to get you for your birthday, so I made a donation to the show. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's the perfect gift. What woman wouldn't want cash?
I got Casino in Netflix today in my mailbox, so I'm going to watch it tonight.
Just wait.
Oh, I've seen it before. I love that scene when Joe Pesci sticks his head in the vice.
There's another great scene in there where Pesci finally realizes that the walls are closing in and there's no place to go. And he's sitting there and he says, I really effed up this time, man. And he knows it's over. And I just wonder if that will happen with Trump.
Yeah. When they're playing the House of the Rising Sun, and De Niro's narrating, he said they've had it with everybody.
Yeah.
They had it with the guy, and then Sharon Stone is like falling down the side of the.
Oh, that's
the
tragic.
Hotel lobby,
That's tragic. It's a cinder.
Yeah, it is. It is a true story too. It's like Wise Guys, Thomas Pileggi. It's based on a true story.
It's an amazing. It's an amazing movie, and just for the performances alone, the story is insane. But the performances. I mean, when Sharon Stone. Oh my God, we should give her an Oscar every year for that performance.
I agree, absolutely.
Amazing,
phenomenal. I said to Howard, I wanted to ask you this. These cons, that they could go down for treason and sedition, couldn't they, by revealing this stuff?
I don't know about treason, but sedition, perhaps. I don't know. I haven't studied sedition laws lately, so I don't remember what the threshold is. But, obviously obstruction is there, and, conspiring to obstruct and, all this. I mean, listen, they all need to go. We need to clean everybody. Ryan could take Nunes off of the Intelligence Committee today, and he won't do it. They're all defending this ridiculous, nonsensical, effort to sow confusion about whether or not we need law enforcement in this country. It's crazy. And they got liberals defending the FBI, which is a crazy position to be in. But, obviously for counterintelligence alone, you need it.
Yeah, well, you made great, Randy, I love you. Do an awesome job. Everybody at work the show does an awesome job.
Mm-hmm.
You laid it out so well. I mean, Ku Klux Klan, when he says, you can't make this shit up. Bullshit, you made it up.
Of course.
All you guys do is make it up. All you make it up. This is right. Right is wrong. Black is white. Up is down. What universe are we living in? I mean,
it's Trumplandia. It's a very strange. It's a strange world that we find ourselves in. I used to say there's nothing new under the sun. This is new. I've never seen a president, even in the Herbert Hoover, in the J. Edgar Hoover years, when J. Edgar Hoover was, compiling, lists of senators that cheated on their wives or drank too much or whatever it was. He had a file, and everybody lived in fear of this FBI director because there were no limits on his ability to wiretap political opponents as he saw them. That's why we have what we have now, this cumbersome thing, this large hurdles that you have to jump over in order to get a wiretap in this country, and as it should be. But Trump wants this gun because how many times have he said he's so frustrated? He's frustrated with law enforcement. He thinks he should, he can't understand. The Justice Department's part of the executive branch. Why can't he control what they do?
Right, yeah. He's completely, and he's getting, I mean, you mentioned this one time and said, I don't know if he's a sociopath or a psychopath. I just want him gone. I'm wondering who's pulling his strings and how much of this shit is real and how much is Kelly.
I know.
And the other racist, that Nazi racist Miller, the other guy, in his cabinet and stuff.
Stephen Miller?
Stephen Miller, thank you, Rand. And I'm just, it's like everything. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover, we were talking the other day about McCarthyism, and there's another great movie, with De Niro. It's called Guilt by Suspicion, and it talks about all the Hollywood stars and you see a lot of people's careers got people died and stuff when McCarthyism and Spike Cohn was pulling his bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sickening.
It's dangerous, is what it is.
It is dangerous. It's like you say, Randy. This country will not be destroyed from without. And we are seeing it right, and be destroyed from within.
Only from within. It's the only way. And we have somebody who is acting in the best interest of another country at the highest level of our government, the President of the United States. And he is not, this man is doing Russia's wet dream. He's doing numbers on our Justice Department, numbers on our law enforcement, numbers on our judiciary. I mean, the FISA court is what they're really after here. If I were if I were the FISA court judge or the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court right now, I would be livid with this attack.
Well, I just hope that they get. Can he get him on the criminal statute if he sends it to New York, the Southern District of New York?
Yes.
Because he's gonna. He can't claim executive privilege if Comey Mueller just is fine. I'll send it to my buddy in the Southern District of New York and see what you do then, Trumpy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I think, might happen if it goes that far. If he fires Rosenstein to get this Rachel girl in there to fire Mueller, Mueller will brief up the Southern District of New York on anything that's actionable in New York against Junior, against Ivanka, meetings with China, whatever it is. The Russians, Manafort lives in New York. He lives in Trump Tower. Yeah, and Eric Schneiderman will take it from there, and Donald Trump's kids will be indicted, and there's not a damn thing he can do. He won't be able to pardon any state crimes.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
Randi Rhodes, Air Force.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randi's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randi's house. Eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randi was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please, go to RandiRhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
Hi, I'm Laura Flanders of The Laura Flanders Show. Watch every week on Free Speech TV, Link TV, YouTube, or if you're in New York, CUNY TV. Prefer to listen? Subscribe to the free podcast at lauraflanders.com. I end every week with a commentary. I call it the F word. Here's this week's. Dang, patriarchy's pathetic sometimes. And no, I'm not talking about the shriveled specter of former Spartacus star Kirk Douglas at the Golden Globes, although that did explain why so many billionaires are spending mad money on anti-aging research. No, I'm talking about the age-old routine of laying on a catfight, the bread and circus distraction white male capital uses to fend off feminist threats. It's routine stuff. In the months since the Harvey Weinstein allegations broke, a steady drip of anti-accuser women have come forth to say not me too, but me not. Women like Catherine Deneuve, Donna Karan, Brigitte Bardot. Now, I don't happen to give a fig what Brigitte Bardot thinks about anything. She's pro-Le Pen, probably pro-Nazi too, but it's long past time we got wise to this stuff. Votes for women? Voila! A National Association of American Women Opposed to Women's Suffrage was born. Anita Hill? An itty-bitty group was made up by the right to come out in favor of Clarence Thomas. As soon as white male capital gets queasy, too many critics rocking the boat, there's always spotlight time for women who'll take on other women and throw oil on the water of any storm about to break out. Which is why I want to celebrate a very different scene this week. The scene in Judge Rosemarie Aquilina's court. Judge Aquilina presided over the sentencing of Larry Nassar, the former U.S. gymnastics team doctor and child sex abuser. For a week, she forced Creep Nassar to hear the women and girls he abused talk. And let's be clear, as young as 6 and 7, his victims weren't women. They were kids. If anyone at any of the television networks had any sense, or less loyalty to the status quo perhaps, this is the hearing that should have played out live like the O.J. trial. Judge Ito, eat your heart out. Judge Aquilina rocked. She invited, she listened, and after every statement she addressed the speaker, usually to commend a young girl's courage or to remind anyone who needed reminding that the guilty one was in the dock. I don't know about you, but I have absolutely no need for Deneuve when we've got this judge. She's just as well coiffed and makes infinitely more sense. She's also modeling a new sort of justice. You want cross-generational, cross-class solidarity, due process, a multiracial army of changemakers? Don't watch the catfight. Watch Aquilina's court. You can find all the video on YouTube or through a link at our Facebook page. Write to me, tell me what you think. That's Laura, L-A-U-R-A, at lauraflanders.com, and subscribe to get another F word next week.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Thank you, Washington Post. Thank you, Philip Bump. See, these are reporters' names that you should know, okay? Adam Entus and Philip Bump and Tom Hamburger and Maggie Haberman. These are the reporters that actually do the really, really hard work. So Philip Bump did a wonderful thing, which is something I tell you to do all the time, and that is when you're trying to figure something out, make a timeline. It's how you figure out, who could have been where and when and what was going. And Philip Bump has put that together now. Now, remember, this memo, I told you right away, when you look at this memo and you look at the last paragraph of the memo, you realize their own cherry-picked memo makes no sense. It makes no sense. Okay, and here's why. Here's the timeline that Philip, because this memo deals with the application for a warrant to surveil Carter Page, who, by the way, had already left the campaign. That warrant wasn't issued for him until October 21st, so the application wasn't received by the FISA court till October 21st, and Carter Page was gone. So he wasn't a member of the Trump campaign at that point, something that Trump has told you. Well, he was only here for a short time. We got rid of him very quickly. Right? Okay. So this is the timeline. Carter Page is named to Trump's foreign policy advisory team in March of 2016. All right, just keep that in mind. He's gone by the time October rolls around. But in early 2016, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, these two FBI employees, they're having an affair. And over the course of the election, they're sharing text messages, and they're talking about all the candidates. They're talking about Bernie, and they're talking about Hillary, and they're talking about Donald, and they're talking about the primaries, and they are making disparaging comments about everybody, and then they make disparaging remarks about Donald Trump too. April 26th of 2016, April 26th, George Papadopoulos, also a foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign, is told by a Russian-linked contact that the Russians have dirt on Hillary Clinton in the form of emails, which we now have seen. He relays this to an Australian diplomat who's really Australian intelligence. Shortly after that, so it's sometime, April, early May of 2016, and the Australians notify the American government, okay? The Australians are the people and this happens in April, okay? June 20th of 2016, Chris Steele, working for Fusion GPS, starts writing reports assessing Donald Trump's relationships to businesses in Russia. Unmentioned in this memo is that Fusion GPS's research into Trump began at the behest of a conservative media outlet called the Free Beacon. The memo notes that Steele was a longtime FBI source, right? I read you the memo, suggesting that there is credibility for Chris Steele within the Bureau, right? I mean, this is their own idiotic memo. All right. Steele's work is then funded by the Democratic National Committee and the campaign of Hillary Clinton through a law firm called Perkins Coie. It is not clear if Christopher Steele knows who's funding his research beyond the law firm. But on July 7th, Carter Page goes to Moscow. On July 19th, Chris Steele writes a report about Carter Page going to Moscow. According to a Steele source, Page met with the chief executive of Rosneft, which is a big oil firm, and an official from the Kremlin. Late July, Strzok starts a counterintelligence investigation targeting the Trump campaign based on the information that we got from Australian intelligence regarding Papadopoulos back in April. That information, the New York Times reported last year, is that the Australian government informed the FBI that Papadopoulos knew about the emails before they were leaked shortly before the start of the Democratic National Convention, July 25th. In September, at some point in September, Chris Steele speaks with a Justice Department official named Bruce Orr, whose wife worked for Fusion. Steele tells Orr that he was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. But context is missing from this quote because and I told you I have this up on my screen, in the testimony before the Senate, Glenn Simpson, under oath, indicates that Steele was alarmed about the relationship between Trump and Russia from the very beginning, meaning that the opposition he had to Trump being president was less about Donald Trump and more about what he was learning about Donald Trump's relationships with bad guys in Russia. That's what's missing. On September 23rd, Yahoo News reports that Page met with officials from Rosneft and the Kremlin also back in July. This story comes from what Steele told Michael Isikoff himself, according to the memo. But in testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, Glenn Simpson confirms that Steele had met with a number of outlets in late September, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Yahoo News, the New Yorker, and ABC News. And as a matter of fact, it's so amazing how great minds think alike, because these are the portions of the testimony that I have in front of me and highlighted. I'll start with the early testimony, okay? This is Mr. Rooney from the Intelligence Committee. He asks Glenn Simpson, did you direct Chris Steele to brief the media outlets and why? And under oath, he says, yes, we did it together. Initially, the reason was that everyone assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election when we initially briefed the media. That was our assumption. Well, this was just, the end of September. I mean, it was right before the election. It was 30 days out, okay? And every poll had Hillary winning until Comey reopens the email investigation, which Rudy Giuliani goads him into. Okay, that's an aside. But here's what Glenn Simpson says about the media. He said, yes, we did it together. Initially, the reason was that everyone assumed that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. And when we initially briefed the media, that was our assumption. I have a lot of different longstanding interest, which is Russian influence in the United States and foreign interference in elections. And I mean, this may sound hard to believe, but I wanted people to know about what we had found because I thought it was important. And so a lot of the people that we briefed weren't campaign reporters. They were national security reporters. And, I started out doing work on this issue of foreign interference in American elections at the Wall Street Journal in the 90s because I wrote a series of articles about Chinese government operations to help elect Bill Clinton. And so it'd been something I was very interested in and concerned about for a very long time. Rooney asks him, did you learn that Steele had briefed the FBI on the dossier materials? And Glenn Simpson said, I eventually learned that, yes. This information is a national security information, is national security information. Chris Steele originally said, I think we should go. I think we should report to the FBI. That was in late July or late June, shortly after the first memo. And Rooney says 16, and Simpson says 16. He said, I'm a former intelligence officer, and we're your closest ally. I have obligations, professional obligations. If there's a national security emergency or a possible national security issue, I have to report it. Mr. Rooney, so was this before he actually did it? Glenn Simpson, yes. Okay. Here's the other section about the media. This is on page 103. This is Mr. Levy talking to Glenn Simpson. He says, and my last question for you, Mr. Simpson, is why did you go to direct Mr. Steele to go to the media with the information in the Steele dossier? And Glenn Simpson says, sure. Well, there were two instances of this or rounds of it, and I think I was beginning to recount this earlier. In whatever the first round was, I assume it was sometime in mid-September, and it was, or early October, it was mainly about telling the press, a few high-level members of the national security press and the top-level press, that we had information that there was a Russian intelligence operation that the Russians were engaged in, that this was more than just hacking, and that there was a major effort to interfere with the election, and that it allegedly involved the Trump organization. And the reason for that, the motivation for that, was mainly because I thought this was historic. I thought it was something the press needed to investigate and know about and ask the intelligence community about because I wanted to expose it. They were operating under the assumption at that time that Hillary was going to win the election, and so there was no urgency to it. And there was an assumption on my part that nothing would be published about any of this before the election. And I wanted to tell them about it because that was when it was happening. But I didn't, it was basically a political campaign. And when you get past Labor Day, people stop publishing stories that could be perceived as a late hit or an October surprise or some kind of stunt. And so in a presidential campaign, you're sort of winding down at that point. All the information that you need to gather for debates or political ads or anything like that, it's all been gathered. Anyway, we wanted people to know. And we were also of the view at that point, we'd been doing the research for 2+ months. We were of the view that there was really something here, that this was really bad, and that there was some serious allegations that it wasn't just Russians. It was Russians working with Americans. And he goes on to say there were a trickle of stories, more than a trickle, but there was some very limited stories about people associated with Trump having connections to Russians. And I can remember specifically, there were stories about Carter Page and his trip to Moscow and the fact that there was something that was of FBI interest and that Carter Page and that stuff on Carter Page that we covered with the media. But anyway, none of that media made a dent in the general coverage, and it didn't bother me because I wasn't expecting any of it to really make a dent. Okay, so they do talk to the media, and at some point, this memo that was released today that omits all of this states that Perkins Coie hosts a meeting with Steel and Fusion GPS where media outreach is discussed. In a September 26th interview with the Post, Page says he's taking leave from the campaign, so he's gone. Carter Page is gone on September 16th. October 18th, which is about 2 weeks later, Steele files another report alleging that Page offered to trade the lifting of sanctions against Russia in exchange for a stake in Rosneft. And then on October 21st, the FBI applies for and receives a warrant to surveil Page to last 90 days. Now, he's already gone from the Trump campaign. The warrant is signed 3 times by James Comey, and then 1 time for the 4th renewal by Andy McCabe, who was acting director after Comey was fired in May. The warrants were also signed by Deputy Attorneys Sally Yates, Dana Puente, and Rod Rosenstein. The renewals were on January 19th, April 19th, July 18th, 2017. And central to this memo is the argument that the warrant application was flawed from the outset. But what the initial, warrant application, because they say what the initial warrant application didn't disclose was the role of the DNC, Clinton campaign, or any other party that was funding the Steele information. But because the memo writes, quote, the political origins of the Steele dossier were then known to senior and FBI officials, but it's not clear if there was a link to Clinton. And the Times reports that the warrant application did note, how they saw the warrant application, I don't know, but the warrant application did note that the Steele report was politically motivated, but it didn't say by the DNC or the Clinton campaigns. It did say that this dossier was a politically motivated document. The application itself does cite extensively the application cited extensively the Yahoo News article and incorrectly assesses that Steele did not directly provide information to Yahoo News, but the application didn't include Steele's comments to Orr or Orr's wife relation. Philip, you have to go back and fix this because I can't follow it. McCabe testified December 2017, no surveillance warrant would have been sought from the Foreign Intelligence Court without Steele dossier information. I can't follow this. Sorry about that. It was just handed to me. I was reading it for the first time on the air. Anyway, this memo leaves out a whole lot of stuff, especially about phone intercepts and especially about the genesis of the story to our intelligence community. And that story came from a meeting George Papadopoulos had with an Australian intelligence guy who relays it to the United States. Carter Page was not part of the Trump administration, the Trump campaign when the FISA warrant was applied for. And they don't provide you any information about the warrant itself. They just tell you what they think And what's very, very interesting here, Devin Nunes has never seen the FISA warrant application. He has never seen it. Never. And in fact, nobody in Congress has seen it except for 2 members of the intelligence community, of the intelligence committee, and 2 of their staff. So all these other Republicans that are talking, they're talking out of their ass. They haven't seen it. Buy a stinking podcast. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.